Hello and welcome to our first live stream of 2024. Sorry, we are slightly delayed starting. Some kind of New Year technical glitch. I'm not quite sure why we all managed to get through in the end. So my apologies for that. Completely my end. And thank you very much to Hannah and Beth for bearing with me. They were great, just kind of keeping calm in the background there as we got everyone in. So yes, sorry for the delay, but we are here now, which is the most important thing. I hope you had a really good festive season. However you were celebrating it, I certainly had a great time with the family. I'm able to take a good week or so off from doing anything related to podcasting and education, which was it's the first time for quite a few months, so it was really nice to do that. But fantastic to get back and really excited to be able to share some really great educational experiences, both with on the podcast and also obviously here on the live show. So first things first, if you haven't already, please make sure that you do subscribe and also hit that notification bell so that you know exactly what's going on in the coming weeks and months, and that we're sort of happy to kind of interact as much as we possibly can. And obviously, the whole point of this live show is that you can leave comments, you can ask some questions, we can be as interactive if you want, if that's what you'd like to do. If not, just sit there and enjoy what you're listening to. But that's the point of the show, is to be, we have the opportunity to interact should you wish to do it. So if you haven't already and you want to follow the audio podcast, which of course is where we started some 375 plus episodes ago, this is the place to go. If you go to educationonfire.com/listen, you can use any of these platforms and follow, subscribe, whatever that platform asks you to do. And in that way, the latest episode always gets downloaded to your device, which means that you have the opportunity of never missing a show, and you've got everything that you want there in one place. So speaking of that particular podcast, here we go. So the episode that we have released this week, as you can see on our website, everything is there. All the different episodes come up week by week. And this particular one this week was with Joshua Fullard, and it was a fantastic conversation because I talk a lot about what education could be, what you think education might be, and the possibilities of all of those things. But I'm not a researcher. I'm not someone who's based in that academic world. And it was fantastic to speak to Josh and be able to sort of really sort of explore that with someone who does a lot of research, that does some writing, is a real expert in that field. And not surprisingly, a lot of what we say here on the show is sort of backed up by his experience and his research as well. But it's great to kind of have that kind of real expert background. So do check that out, episode 376, which went live on Monday. And also the episodes were released across the Christmas period as well. So if you did miss any of those and you weren't listening in the car or wherever you normally do go back and check all those. They'll all be on either the Education on Fire website or whichever platform you use to listen. So let's bring on Hannah and Beth. They've waited long enough, and we're going to be talking, as you saw there, about sort of engineering and that kind of idea of exactly what we want to be able to produce, what we want to be able to support children with, certainly in that kind of 11 to 14 age bracket, in terms of the Engineers Week, and being able to sort of give people that opportunity of knowing what they're able to do, what jobs are out there, and how they're being supported in this particular way. So let's bring on Beth and Hannah, and they can describe a little bit about their expertise and what they've been doing and how they're involved. So thank you both for joining me. I'm really pleased that you're able to join me tonight, and glad that we're on air finally. So yeah, thank you so much indeed.
Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. So, Hannah, why don't you start us off in terms of what was the week all about? I know it was in November, wasn't it, that you were able to do it? What sort of your part of it, and a little bit of your background for those people who are unaware?
So I was asked to join in with tomorrow's Engineers Week, which I think was trying to sort of shine a light on all the different types of jobs and people who make up engineers, our engineering workforce, and the different kind of jobs you can do that are related to engineering. Some unusual ones there. I thought I was pretty out there, but we had people who were working on sort of international solar space ships, and people who design bridges. And I thought it was really interesting just to see actually the variety of engineers out there, because it's not on paper, I think, the most exciting job title out there, but actually if you get into it and you see how many of these different roles are available, you get to meet all these different people. And I was really excited to be part of it, because it's not often that I get to sort of call myself an engineer and be amongst engineers, because my job is quite rock and roll. And even though I am technically an engineer, it's nice to be sort of put in the category, I suppose.
And we should say, you mentioned rock and roll there. That's literally as well as sort of figuratively in terms of what you do. So to sort of take people into your sort of day in a life of what you do, and like say that sort of behind the scenes of that sort of sound engineer.
Sure. So I'm a live sound engineer, which, in a nutshell, means I make things loud. I work with bands and artists, usually on tour, mixing their sound. What I specialize in is monitors, which isn't the sound for the audience, but it's actually the sound for the artist. So I work with a lot of radio frequency technology, so things like wireless microphones and in-ear monitors, and I sit behind a huge, great, big mixing console, which looks a bit like a spaceship, and control the audio inputs and outputs for hundreds of different instruments and wonderful things on stage. And so that's my job, basically.
And I thought it was really important to sort of really sort of get that into the world sort of from the off the bat, really, because like you said in as you first started speaking, that idea when you sort of hear engineer, you know, maybe just me, you start thinking bridges, you start thinking building, you start thinking that sort of traditional line of what that is. But of course, that isn't the be all and end all, which I think is what the week was really sort of exploring there. So, Beth, take us into your role in how Engineering UK is sort of part of it and supporting it and helping it become a reality.
Yeah, so I'm the Director of Communications at Engineering UK, and tomorrow's Engineers Week, brilliantly supported by Hannah, is an annual event that was actually in its, I had to look this up, but it was in its 11th year when we ran it in early November last year, and it's really about inspiring. Our kind of key target age group is 11 to 14-year-olds, but actually what we also find is that teachers are really interested in our showcasing of what engineering is all about. We work with a huge range of partners across engineering and technology, and we aim to break stereotypes about what engineers are. So absolutely, as you were just saying, you don't imagine that somebody who does the job that Hannah does is an engineer, but absolutely that is what she does. And as Hannah was saying, we had a civil engineer, we had a wind turbine engineer, and we had I wrote it down, space energy development engineer, as part of a panel for tomorrow's Engineers Week. And there are hundreds and hundreds of other jobs in engineering that probably young people, and certainly I think we tend to find their parents too, don't really know are available to them. So the week is really all about bringing that to the fore, and as Hannah said, kind of really shining a light on all of those modern engineering careers that are out there.
So sort of following on from that then, Hannah, did you go into your profession thinking you were going to be an engineer, or was it kind of the music background? Was it the audio background? What was sort of your little pathway in?
So I actually started out studying music technology and sound design, going into it much more from actually a creative point of view. I thought I would end up as a producer or something more to do with sort of composition side of things. And it wasn't until a lot after I left university, and I found it really hard actually when I left university because there weren't that many available opportunities. The music industry is a sort of very closed off place. So I sort of struggled getting my foot in the door. And it wasn't until I sort of came around and started working in a theatre and doing live sound that I sort of came around to being a live sound engineer. So it definitely wasn't where I thought thought I'd end up. But yeah, it's been a whole journey really. I've done all sorts of things related to sound. So ending up as a live sound engineer is sort of just the last step I'm in at the moment. Who knows where I'll end up really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as a musician myself, I've worked in opera, ballet, music theatre, and it's something, like you say, you're never quite sure where that's going to be. When I went to music college, it was that sense of I want to play, but I don't know what that works like or how that's going to be. And I've been very fortunate to play in lots of different scenarios, and the live sound thing is something which I find fascinating, because certainly in the theatre you sort of set yourself up and you sort of have that opportunity then for the sound engineer to hear every single drum, every single instrument, and they kind of create that sound and build that whole kind of profile of what's needed for that particular production. And it's a fascinating world, which when you're at music college, it's all about kind of the acoustic sound that you're creating, but to then be working with other people is a fascinating kind of new relationship, which I sort of really enjoyed as I did more and more of it. And how do you find it in terms of that kind of sort of relationship and what you're trying to produce sort of in that sort of whole sort of soundscape, as it were, that you're producing?
I think the job itself is a really interesting one because when I sort of started going to gigs as a teenager, I didn't know what a live sound engineer was because they're sort of hidden away in the dark in the back. So, and you're looking at the band, you're not thinking about who's working behind the scenes. So it wasn't until I sort of got quite late into my teens that I even sort of discovered what a sound engineer was. I think it was I was watching Wayne's World or something, and I saw the bit where all the roadies sort of run onto the stage and pick up the mic stands, and I was like, "What's that job? I want to do that." So yeah, the job is a bit of a it's a bit of a paradox, really, in that sense, in that try shining a light on a job that actually that isn't meant to have a light shined on it. It's quite strange, but I'm trying my best. But yeah, the relationship side of it is quite interesting because you're working with musicians who can sometimes be quite difficult people, quite sensitive people, and so you have to have this sort of technical knowledge and intelligence about what you're doing, about acoustics, about sound, about electronics, especially, and all these sorts of wonderful variable things that conditions that you get from touring around the world into different venues with different power acoustics, the whole lot. But you're also dealing with sometimes quite unstable people in the nicest way. Creative people are often quite special people. So you're having to sort of ego manage as well, and not in a bad way. Like egos are really important for musicians, but you do have to kind of balance a lot of emotional intelligence with the sort of technical aspects. And I would actually say that my job is sort of 80% people skills and sort of 20% engineering at the end of the day, which
Yeah.
is quite strange.
Yep, I can completely relate to that. And I think also that sense of when you are working together at the sort of the I'll say the pinnacle, but certainly the sort of the sharp end is the fact that there's time sensitive thing. It's a sound check. Like you say, you've been on the road for some reason, something's not quite worked out, and like you say, everyone's kind of sort of up against it, as it were, and then that's when the personalities start to really come out. And I love the fact you talked about that because so much of what we think about engineering might be planning, it might be technical, but so that idea of creativity within it, and also that sense of, like say, the human relationships and the skills, I think is absolutely fascinating. And so we sort of talked there with Hannah in terms of how you get into your profession, as it were, and your part of engineering. Beth, take us in your idea in terms of, because I know there are different sort of ways in, whether it's an apprenticeship, whether it's an academic way in, there's lots of different options, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just picking up on what Hannah was just talking about, I think, so I'm not an engineer, but I absolutely recognise the really key role they play in all sorts of areas of our lives. And it was really interesting this morning listening back to the Tomorrow's Engineers Week broadcast, just to hear the different perspectives from all of those engineers. And I think Hannah's point around communication is such a key one, that there might be a perception that engineering is quite a solitary endeavor, or that it's that it's lots of science and maths and doing calculations and those kinds of things. And that's absolutely part of what it's about. But actually that piece around creativity, around collaboration, around communication, and indeed kind of working to deadlines so that things get done in a timely way are really key skills that that engineers across all sorts of jobs within engineering actually do use. In terms of your question, though, about how the routes into engineering, I think it's probably one of the professions with the most broad range of routes in, and there really does feel like there is something for everybody. So as you were talking about There are routes like apprenticeships, which is such a key part of the engineering workforce landscape, I suppose. People go via higher education. There's a new qualification called T levels, which young people do between the ages of 16 and 18 in certainly in England, and at the moment T levels are an English qualification. So there are loads of different ways in, and really those which suit your preferred style of learning, I guess, as an individual. And I think it's very fair to say that there's also a really big need for engineers across the economy. So what Engineering UK really is all about is seeking to inform and inspire more young people from more backgrounds. So I think it's maybe not that much of a surprise that Hannah isn't a typical engineer in terms of her gender, for example, because this is a profession that currently has more men working in it than it does women, but is a great place to be. And as I say, there are routes in for everyone, and as Hannah's demonstrated, there are ways that you can work within something that you're really passionate about, and have engineer in your job title.
And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Is the fact that you find an area that you're passionate about, something that you're interested in, and then you start to say, okay, now where does my skill set work into that? Like, say, whether that's a particular engineer job title, if it's that kind of, I just want to be involved. It's like Hannah was saying, involved in music, understanding that that's something I want to spend more time doing, and then you sort of find your feet. And I love the fact that maybe from what you said about those routes in, that becomes even more important, because it might be that, at 16, you're thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure, 18, I'm not quite sure, but actually you've kind of find yourself in a way that, oh, now I could do this, I could take this degree, or I could be on an apprenticeship scheme, or I could be somewhere where someone's going to sort of show me how that's going to work out. And I guess that's the key thing, maybe, is it that these the actual week itself is sort of aimed at that sort of 11 to 14, so people can start thinking about these things early on and understanding how that can be beneficial when they do have that idea of, maybe I want to put a bit of extra time into this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is about busting some of those stereotypes, really. I don't imagine that there are lots of young people out there thinking that the sort of job that Hannah does, or that others who we featured on the Tomorrow's Engineers broadcast this time round, are involved in. I think as well, it is, engineering's not something that's on the curriculum, and so there is an additional requirement for things like Tomorrow's Engineers Week and other sort of extracurricular things, STEM clubs, those kinds of things. We, as Engineering UK, we lead the Big Bang Fair, which is an opportunity for young people and their teachers to go to a big exhibition, typically at the NEC in Birmingham, to have a look at what a career in engineering and technology might mean, because it's not obvious until you start to scratch the surface. So providing those opportunities, and also providing access to role models like Hannah, so that young people, their teachers and their parents really, can have a look at what a career in engineering might look like, and who it is that work as engineers.
And Hannah, in terms of the sort of the week from your perspective, what was your role, as it were, in terms of sort of facilitating, in terms of sharing your experience? How did that sort of work in sort of practical terms?
So the bulk of it was really the sort of interview we did. But aside from that, I did try and spread the word on social media and in my network about, come and see this brilliant talk. I wasn't involved with the rest of the week. I was just involved right at the start with the interview. But I think it's a brilliant thing. I mean, I wish when I was younger, I had something like this to sort of look at and get inspired by.
And do you think that would have changed your... Well, I guess there are two parts of it. Do you think it would have changed your direction, or do you think it would have given you a little bit of clarity earlier on?
I think it would have given me a lot more confidence going into what I sort of knew I wanted to go into. It would have given me more confidence. When I started out at school, I didn't see any women doing what I did. I didn't have any role models. In fact, I was told by my music teacher that it was a waste of time to study music technology. And so I had all these sort of opinions put on me about what, was a career path and what wasn't. So it would have probably really helped actually to see someone like myself doing this. And that would have given me a lot more confidence, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine. And do make sure, if you are watching live, if you've got any questions or there's anything that you'd like to share or ask, do put them in the comments, and we can bring them up on screen. If you'd like to do that, it's always great to kind of have that opportunity while we're actually here live. So yeah, please do make the most of that if it's something you'd like to do. So, Beth, I know there was something like 51,000 people that were involved in or sort of had access to this. So take us through, how do you make that big an impact on an event like this?
So you're absolutely right. I think during the week itself, we had 51,000 pupils involved in Tomorrow's Engineers Week through their schools. In fact, I suspect there's been more since then, because we've made the broadcast available to watch again, and I haven't seen the latest numbers on it. I think what's great about Tomorrow's Engineers Week is that it has, over the years, it has become a bit of a placeholder in people's diaries. It's a great collaborative endeavour. So Hannah mentioned sharing what was happening during Tomorrow's Engineers Week with her network, but I think over that period it's really grown. I think as well it probably is evidence that that sort of level of engagement by young people in schools is probably evidence of there being a need or a desire for schools to introduce their young people, their pupils to what careers in engineering might look like, and I think that's absolutely to be applauded. So I think it's something that has grown over time. It's something that the engineering and technology community, in terms of some of the big employers and also individuals, have really got behind over time, and something that we hope will continue to grow and grow, because it clearly does strike a chord for teachers and for the young people they're working with.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's that sense of, if you speak to a teenager, and I've had 3 children going through the school system, and it is very much that kind of, I'm going to school, I've got this subject, we do this, you have your GCSEs, your A-levels, or however it is that you take it to do. And it's those kind of opportunities to see that you're there doing that from a purpose. And I can understand where some of that sort of lack of understanding or joining those dots coming from, because of course children are in school from such a young age. It just becomes what you do. And there's talk about exams at the end, and there's talk about careers and that kind of thing. But it's only when you start to talk about that creativity and your passions and how that actually, you can start to take control of your future based on what you'd like to do. And then I think these opportunities then become a kind of a real sort of stepping stone into, there's a light bulb moment here. I can see actually where my future might go. I don't need to know my end job, and that probably will change over time. As we know, the careers are changing so fast. But that opportunity to think, I can see, there's a person I can speak to, or there's an organization I can reach out to, or someone like Hannah was saying, I see somebody who I've never seen that might be able to help me and push me in that direction, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And I think to be able to reach that amount of people is really key. So, I mean, in terms of sort of 2024, we're going to share the link in terms of being able to watch that replay of the broadcast from last year. But is it kind of the same thing where you have different focuses? What sort of the general sort of early planning stage, shall we say?
So we will definitely run Tomorrow's Engineers Week, and you're quite right. We are at the very early planning stages, but at its heart, the week will always be around showcasing engineers and the really interesting jobs that they do. And we know that, if we do this, if we help young people understand what a career in engineering might be, then they're more likely to be interested in it themselves. So if they know what engineers do, or actually, interestingly, if they make a link between engineering roles and environmental sustainability, for example, they're more interested in learning about and potentially pursuing engineering careers. So that will always be our focus. How we're going to do it in November, I couldn't tell you because we haven't worked that one out yet, but absolutely it's here to stay. We're very proud of what it's become, and we're also delighted by the kind of the way that the community gets behind Tomorrow's Engineers Week.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, like I say, for 11 years is a long time, and with the sorts of numbers and the people you're able to reach, it's a real positive thing. And like I say, a lot of the academic year does work on those kind of cornerstones, don't they, of certain things that they know are coming up, and the more that gets into the psyche, if they're being able to support children, the better. And as we start to sort of round up, Hannah, if you sort of had something you wanted to share, which was, this is sort of one I've sort of taken away from my experience in terms of being an engineer, and your like I say, your perception and your version of it, that you better sort of impart for people. And I think the other thing about it is just that kind of being able to sort of share that long-term experience in terms of, like I said, some of that pathway, but how you sort of personally were able to sort of follow that in an organic way, rather than I've just realized this is a job for me and this is how I'm gonna go and get it.
Yeah, I guess the first thing I want to say is that I work with so many amazing engineers, other sound engineers, lighting engineers, video engineers, pyrotechnicians. Like the amount of engineers working in the live music industry is just insane. There's jobs you couldn't even think of, automation engineers, all these amazing job roles that are so hidden away. And I think I really want to make it my mission to kind of spread awareness of these roles, especially women working in these roles, to make it an accessible thing, that all these sort of hidden job roles are sort of out in the open and people can find them and get inspired by them. I think for me personally, it's such a joy to be able to do a job I genuinely love every day. Like every day I wake up and I'm like, I have the best job in the world. And I would have never ever have dreamed that I would call myself an engineer. When I was at school, I think physics and maths were my two worst favorite subjects. I didn't do very well in them. I was more good at English and stuff. And that really didn't make me feel like that door was open to me. So I guess what I want to say is if you have a dream, you can make it possible. You can be whatever you want to be if you have that passion. The passion is more important than any, grades you get or people tell you you're good in this or that. If you have that passion and you have that determination, you can become an engineer.
Yeah,
That's
and
what I want to say. It's pretty cheesy, but there you go.
I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I think it really kind of sums up really sort of with great clarity that idea of the environment you want to work in, because like you said, you're working with other sound engineers, but then there's lighting and all those other things that you mentioned, and I think that's when you start to really understand how you want to see your life going forward, because you could even be working in the same kind of way. It might still be lighting, it might still be sound, but not in a theatre, or it's going to be a live venue, or it's going to be in a stadium, or it's going to be in a small acoustic. You might want to be based in one particular venue, whatever that happens to be, but you're still using those sort of what seems like the same skills from a name point of view, but the way that you would show up each day, the environment you're going to work in is going to be very different as well. And I love the fact that sort of comes across so well in terms of how do I want to work with these other people? Does it want to be the same people all the time? Does it want to change? And I just think I really sort of love that idea. Follow the passion. Of course we're going to work and we're going to get the grades that we hope we can get, but I think the first and foremost is just that kind of, if you're going to love it, if you're passionate about it, and you're going to be creative in what you're going to do, that's what people love to do, because they all want to spark off each other and they all want to spend time with people who are really loving and enjoying what they want to do as well. So Beth, just tell us, just before we round up, from your perspective, what is it exactly that kind of sort of drew you to where you are? Like you say, engineering's not your background, but sort of then sort of finding yourself having to sort of live in that engineering world, as it were, but with your sort of specific sort of job description sort of hat on.
So I've always been really passionate about education, actually, and I kind of fell into Engineering UK without realizing quite the brilliance of engineers and the way that engineers really can take problems and solve them, and they can do that for great big global issues through to things like I don't know the very quick turnaround that engineers did during the pandemic to support the UK through that, through really to doing the sorts of jobs that people like Hannah do, which is actually about making our lives better, but in a different way, in a more fun and creative way. So I have to say I didn't know all of that before I came to Engineering UK. What I did know was that there was an opportunity to help work to maybe dispel some of the myths about engineering. I knew it wasn't, I mean, to be quite honest with you, I suspect when I was at school, I was mostly taught about people like Brunel, and I knew that it was more than that. I loved history, but I did know it was a lot more than that. And I do see engineering as a really brilliant opportunity for young people, whatever their preferred way of learning might be, to pursue their passion, and having the having the responsibility for shouting about that and working with some brilliant people like Hannah, like some of the young people that we work with. We as part of the Big Bang competition, we run a competition every year, and we crown the UK Young Scientist and UK Young Engineer of the Year, and you're only eligible if you're 11 to 18, and these are young people who are doing incredible projects, wanting to make a difference in the world, and coming up with brilliant ideas. And so it's kind of a privilege to do it. It's I know Hannah talked about getting up every day and thinking she's got a great job. I get up every day and think I've got a great job too, because I get the opportunity to really to talk to young people and to talk to people working in engineering about what a great profession it is.
And that's amazing. Well, that really is that sort of sense of kind of like say that community, both in terms of people that you know now, but like say the people that you're affecting that you're going to meet tomorrow or beyond. And I also love that sense of even if you're not even aware that this particular idea of engineering is where you want to go, but there's a problem that's in your community or in the world that you want to help and support, that may well even take you in there to help support yourself, to help solve that problem. Or if there's something you want to share with the world in whatever way, if there's not an obvious way that it's being done now, it may be that you're the person that, because of that passion and that drive, is going to create something. And we know the world is changing at such a fast pace that we really want as many people as possible to be aware of all these things, in which case that's going to sort of really help the world going forward. And as we know, it's our young people that are going to make the biggest difference in that. And I think, as we've mentioned, that idea of creativity, that idea of knowing that anything is possible and you can steer that as you want to, is a really, really sort of passionate and important way of doing it. So just before we finish, I do want to make sure that everyone's aware of where they can go in terms of going forward for this. So as you can see on the screen now, there's the opportunity to watch that broadcast from back in November, and hopefully you've got a real flavour of what you might see in that. But do make sure that you sort of get involved and watch that, so you really do understand it. And then below that, you can see there's also the ability to have the chance to get on the mailing list, and of course that's going to be your best way to be able to go through and make sure that you're understanding what's happening as the rest of the year and develops, and also getting ready for sort of November 2024, where everything's going to be put in place to give you the opportunity of what's going to be available for you at that particular moment. So yes, I really do appreciate that. And most importantly, thank you both for coming on and sharing those experiences. It's been fascinating chatting to you, and really, really great to kind of get an understanding of what's involved for the people and how you've helped everybody, but more importantly, how your individual worlds, which seem so different on sort of one side, are obviously sort of tied so beautifully in terms of what you've been able to do and bringing it together in those times. So yeah, thank you so much indeed. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you to both Beth and Hannah, and as usual, we do sort of share something from a previous episode or something that we've been involved in going forward. So I just wanted to leave you today with this opportunity here to think about teachingpacks.co.uk. Now, Mark is someone who I know and has been very supportive of Education on Fire generally, and this is sort of related to sort of primary schools specifically. But if you haven't been involved in this or you don't know anything about it, please do go and check it out, teachingpacks.co.uk. There is the opportunity from the website there to download some free resources first of all, and it's a very cheap membership where there's constantly new material coming week in, week out, that will just support you and help you no end in your school if it is that sort of primary area that you're really focusing on. So yeah, thank you so much indeed. We'll be back again next week. Do make sure, as I said before, you subscribed and that you have hit that notification. That'll keep you involved in everything that we have on the channel. You can sign up to my mailing list at educationonfire.com, and then you'll get regular details of those things coming out as well. So I really do appreciate your time and spending your evening with us, and we look forward to sharing some more information with you next week. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.